Baldur's Gate 3 took everybody a little bit by surprise. It's the largest game I've worked on. It's the most intensive game I've worked on. Other developers would come up to me and say, I really love this game. Every time you have a moment where something really clicks for an actor and suddenly they become the character, that's an incredibly positive experience. There were lots of moments of that in Baldur's Gate 3 where you just go, oh, that's really worked. With Dev, Lae'zel. Where is Lae'zel now in her journey? At this point, how is she feeling? So here's our scene. This is where we are. This is how. So tell me where you are. Tell me where she is. Safe actors and happy actors will do better work. And I feel like one of my jobs is to make them feel safe, that it's okay if they don't understand. It's okay if they make mistakes. That's fine. I might be getting you to do an hour where I'm asking you to cry over the body of your friend. And then we do the scene again and your friend's alive. And then we do the scene again and your friend's betrayed you. And then we do the scene again and you have no friend. And what are you talking about?
Welcome to the ReadyAimFire podcast, the stories behind your favourite games and the talented craftspeople that bring them to life.
With a fine example today here in Kirsty Gillmore. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are very lucky to have you and your plethora of experience within games going all the way back to 2016, if not before.
Yeah, that's, a little bit before, but that's about right. Yeah.
And there was a whole life before that as well as an actor.
Yes, that's, yes, people, I get reminded that every so often. I'm like, there's a reason I went into direction, shall we say. Yeah.
I'm intrigued, to hear. And obviously you're from New Zealand.
I am,
how
yes.
you ended up here and what brought you into games.
I trained in New Zealand in music and performance theatre and also sound as well. And then I was working as a sound engineer in a post-production studio in New Zealand, doing dubbing and ADR work. And then I moved to the UK on a one-way ticket with not that much money because I wanted to go out and see the world and experience something a little bit bigger. There was a long period of time. I worked at the BBC for a while doing a variety of things. My visa from New Zealand meant that I had to be continuously employed. So I couldn't really go out and do exactly what I wanted to do. I had to kind of keep having employment. Right. And I got into games because when I left the BBC, they offered me redundancy, and I was really happy to take it. And by that point, I had citizenship. I'd gone through the whole process of I had a residency and then citizenship, the long, expensive process. So by that point, I could go back and do freelance work. And then what I did one of the first things when I became a freelancer, I was doing acting and voice acting, went back to that after having years away from it, working at the BBC. And I also decided that I needed like an income stream. And so I started off the recommendation of my partner, who's an actor, was like, well, why don't you do voice demos for actors? Why don't you produce voice demos? Because that will combine like sound skills that you have. You've got the voice acting background. It'll be directing people. You've done a little bit of that over the years in various places. Why don't you try that? And I was like, oh, what a good idea. So I did that. And really it was through working with actors on a regular basis for voiceover work that I really started honing my directing skills and started getting into that. And I didn't know that the job that I do now as a voice and performance director and a casting director for games, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know people did that. I've played games since I was a child. I didn't know that people actually, that was a job. I thought the developers did it. Somebody, and to be fair, a lot of developers do still do it. But I didn't think that was a thing until it was about 2013, no, maybe slightly before then. And I started attending workshops by various very, very experienced voice directors for games that had come over from the US. And I was like, oh, this is a job. This could be a thing. Okay. how can I do this? There's no way into it, really. And I think anybody who directs for games will tell you that there's no real one way into it. Everybody comes from a different aspect. So I was like, fine, well, the way I'm going to do it is I need to be the best I can. I need to learn the most about it. So I went along to as many workshops as I could as an actor, like I signed up as an actor. But primarily I was there to learn about how people directed for games. So I used to go as an actor, go up and like be directed and do these workshops, attend as a workshops and just make a ton of notes and just go, oh, they tried that. Oh, okay, I'm going to go off. And then because I'm producing these voice demos for actors, I'm going to, when I'm directing their gaming voice reels, I'm going to go off and try what I've just learned at this workshop and see if that works. Yeah.
Is that advice you would give anyone else, like trying to just immerse yourself in that world and just observe and learn? Yeah,
I would say that when people say that they want to do directing for like performance or voice directing for games, it's really hard to shadow anyone because of NDAs, and it's just not something like people often say, do you need an assistant? And I really don't. Like I don't need anybody to assist me. But I would say that if you are interested, then going along to workshops, because there's a lot of directors who do workshops, and I would say that that's a really good way of learning how the sort of techniques that other people offer. If you are an actor who wants to go into directing, then there is a way, then obviously every time you're directed for a game, then you can, see what works for you. And I did that a lot as well, like thinking, well, that didn't land with me, that particular direction, but maybe it might for someone else. And sometimes be like, oh, no. Not doing that. A lot of trial and error. But yeah, I'd say it was a really good way of just magpieing a lot of different stuff and trying to figure out how I direct.
Just my knowledge with some directors, you have a unique position where you come from the sound background though, and you said sometimes, obviously, I assume you have an engineer with you some of the time, but you're quite qualified to do it all and understand the sound side that maybe some more creative directors who only come from a creative side necessarily know about. That must have been a huge skill.
It has been really useful in some respects, yes. It means that I can hear very quickly if there's technically something wrong with a take. However, it's not my job. So I have to be really careful to go, I am not in charge of the audio. Somebody else is. I will always defer to the sound engineer because it's a really hard job because I've done it. It was really useful for me when I was doing demos because I did everything. I directed, I produced them, I mixed them, I did everything. And that was really good. And there are some jobs where I do have to be more hands-on with sound. It means that my relationship with the engineers is generally pretty good because I understand what they're doing.
Such a good point, because I was just thinking whether I've been in a volume or the engineers behind or on a TV set or anything, if you understand other people's jobs even a little bit, you kind of go, okay, they need their time now or etc.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's been one of the things that I found that moving more into mocap, I found that it's been really important for me to understand how the mocap engineers work and how the tech works so I can make their jobs a bit easier as well. Because you know what it's like. Often in volumes, you get a lot of, if you get actors who have never been in a volume before, they don't know how mocap works. Some people really struggle with it, and I think if I, as a director, I can understand what the engineers want, what's good for them, then it means I can be a better translator to the actors. And also it means I don't get frustrated when the take's perfect, everybody's really in the moment, it's lovely. But we have to redo it for tech because, a marker fell off or whatever, or people got stuck together slightly or, or something happened, the mocap just had a moment and glitched. And that can be, if you don't understand how the tech works, then that can be really frustrating as a creative process because it's so specific. But, I understand the job they're doing and I understand how it does have to be right. We can't just keep that take, If the data's not right, then we can't just fix it in post.
Which is why it's so important to have a director in a volume, actually, which is happening more and more these days for all those reasons you just stated, to be the conduit to translate maybe into a more creative, because you obviously understand the process from all sides. And it must be terrifying for an actor to go on a volume for the first time and all this other stuff is happening and then you're told to do something in a language that maybe isn't what you're used to.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's
a stick, that's a torch. Go. Pretend that's a torch. That's kind of, and they're like, well, what?
Where am I?
What am I doing? What is this space? Where am I going to? They've got enough going on. It's weird. It's lights. They're in Lycra.
Oh my gosh. So
they've got an HMC. They're not sure what's going on. What's happening. They've been given a whole bunch of rules and they just suddenly feel very alone. Like they feel a lot of pressure to do something and they don't understand it. And I feel like one of my jobs is to make them feel safe, that it's okay if they don't understand. It's okay if they make mistakes. That's fine. We're all there to support you.
Yeah, it's very much like in the booth as well, which I think I've heard you talk about this before, that safety. That's what I should have opened this with. Kirsty, how are you? Because that's what you say. And I love that you say that. You ask an actor how they are at the beginning of a session.
Yeah, it's really important.
Because we do need to kind of ease into that space and feel like we can play and feel safe with the director, etc.
Yeah, I want my actors to feel safe physically. And I want them to feel safe emotionally as well, because I might just be getting you to do an hour of combat arcs. It might not be that deep, but I might be getting you to do an hour where I'm asking you to cry over the body of your friend. And then we do the scene again and your friend's alive. And then we do the scene again and your friend's betrayed you. And then we do the scene again and you have no friend. And what are you talking about? What do you mean I've got a friend? And I might need you to do all of that. So I need you to feel that you can go to all those places safely, that I will be there to carry you if for whatever reason you realize that something's a bit uncomfortable, or if suddenly we have to ask you to do something that's been shoehorned in at the last minute because the writers just added stuff because somebody's forgot. It's game dev. A lot happens. And so you have to trust me that, oh, it's okay. I know we've got these extra 5 lines to do and I know you haven't seen them. And I know that this is a little bit different to what we've done before, but it's fine. I have full confidence you'll be able to do this. Just making sure that you're okay, that they're okay. And just because safe actors and happy actors will do better work. That's just that's just a thing, isn't it?
So important. Yeah, completely agree. Talking about big worlds and big characters and relationships, obviously one of the epic games you have worked on, of many games, is Baldur's Gate 3. Pretty sure probably everyone's heard of it.
I think so.
What was that experience in working, obviously, through COVID as well, and a huge world, directing performance capture, motion capture, and voice, all sorts of different...
It was motion capture and voice in the volume. So we were in purpose-built volumes. We didn't do full PCAP for it, but it was simultaneous motion capture and voice. Yes. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. It was a really big thing. I was just one of quite a large team of directors. I was one of the people, I worked on it for almost 4 years, but there were a lot of us and there was very much a team effort. It was a big team that changed, and the nature of things changed over 4 years because it was, it's the largest game I've worked on. It's the most intensive game I've worked on. And it's a game that, when you work on something for that length of time, like you get to know the actors really well. Mm-hmm. So I do, and there are a lot of actors that became friends because we worked really closely together on it. There are actors that I still work, call back for things, cast them and things because I know what they did. It was the first game that I'd worked on where other developers would come up to me and say, "I really love this game."
Right?
Because I've worked on Call of Duty, and which is fine. Everybody knows what Call of Duty does. And I'm not, that was great to work on. But I don't have developers coming up and saying I love, people do love Call of Duty, but they're not, they're just like, everybody knows what it does. It is a known quantity. Whereas Baldur's Gate 3 took everybody a little bit by surprise. And I had people coming up to me like musicians and designers and coders and all sorts of people going, I've sunk 200 hours into Baldur's Gate 3. The performances are amazing.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you. Obviously Baldur's is the third game in a series and there's been lots of different spin-offs in that world, but was anyone aware of just how important and big that game was going to be when I know working on it 4 years, it's, you said it changed, but was there any inkling of like, this is going to be Game of the Year?
I can't speak for Larian, obviously, because I worked with people from Larian, but I wasn't working in Larian. Yeah. So, I was very much just just one of the performance directors and voice directors on it. We were putting a lot of work into it, but you don't really know. Like, I remember thinking at one point, like, who's the target audience for this? D&D fans, people who are fans of the old school, of the original games, people who are fans of Larian's work, like Divinity Original Sin 2, who are fans of that.
I love those games.
Yeah. So there was a definite, obviously there's an audience there, but no, I don't think anybody really knew how big an impact it was going to be. And I tell you, we had no idea. I don't think anybody really knew the impact the performance was going to have. That's the first game I'd worked on where actually the performers became like a really big deal and people really looked at the performances. You can see great acting in games and people are like, oh my God, the acting in the game is great. But it's quite a niche thing a lot of the time. Like people play games for the experience. They play it for the game's experience, and having really great performances is a really great thing. It's icing on the cake, but it's not necessarily the thing that people grab onto. You'll know that, obviously, as an actor, It's not the whole game,
Absolutely. These characters in Baldur's Gate seem to represent everybody out there as well. And this seemed to really cover all demographics, all people, and the storylines were really relatable and everyone felt a real comfort and a part of it. Was that a big part of Baldur's Gate 3, would you say?
I think people really related to the characters and their journeys.
And I fell in love with them, didn't they?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We've heard some. We had Deborah Wild on here, and she told us some interesting stories about her fan interactions.
I bet she did. I bet she did.
All positive. Yeah, they were good.
Full credit to the actors that the journeys that they took and the writers they took those characters on, and really, I feel like myself as a director, and obviously I can't speak for all the directors, but we were really just there to facilitate, to take people to guide and to shape and to move. And some of the characters I worked with I felt more connected to because I'd worked on them more. And I felt like there were some scenes that I'm incredibly proud of because we worked really carefully on those. But really, it was the actors and the writers,
I guess that's the dream scenario, isn't it? To have actors who know the characters if they've been with them 4 years, and then you're able to kind of help them guide the characters through. So the director's got somebody who knows what they're doing. The actor's got a director who knows how to move them through the world, and then amazing writing. I mean, what a gift.
It was a real gift, especially during near the end. Is like if I was coming on to if I hadn't worked with an actor on a character for a period of time because of schedules and things like that, and I'd just been working on different areas of the game. Then one of the things I would ask, especially to the lead characters, is where is your character now? So with Dev, Lae'zel, where is Lae'zel now in her journey? At this point, how is she feeling? So here's our scene. This is where we are. This is how. So tell me where you are. Tell me where she is at this point, because you will know. You've lived this. I've just come in every so often and gone, that was great. Great. Can we do it again? And this time more sad? But you know what she's gone through and you know what the development of this character is. And that was one of the things I started asking in the later parts of recordings, because actor Dev had a much better idea of what Lae'zel's journey was than I did. Trusting actors has become a really big thing that I've learned over the past kind of couple of years. I'd say I putting a lot more trust in the actors' instincts.
Do you think you, having been an actor as well, that really helps to know how to be with actors as a director?
Do you know, having been a not particularly good actor and now working with very good actors, I think I appreciate acting and the skill a lot more. And I know that giving actors choice is a really important thing that I'm a big advocate for. I really hate line reads. For anybody who doesn't know, a line read is where you like, if there's a line like, oh, I think we should do that, then you tell the actor how to do it by performing the line for them and then saying, do it like that. So that's a line read.
You find sometimes with the lovely developers or something, if they're on set and you don't have, because they don't have the language to communicate and they're desperately trying to find a way, they'll go like this, like this, because what else do you have actually if you're not skilled to know how to speak?
And you're right, I do understand, but there are ways that you can, even if you're not like a trained, because I come from a theatre background as well, if you don't know how to speak to actors, there are ways that you can do it without getting them to mimic. And it also takes away your choice.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, those languages, the few times I've taught. That's where I've really stumbled going, how do I actually, God, the real skill, talking about having respect for actors, like the real respect for directors are going, how do I actually get this, impart this in a way that's really helpful that I'd want to hear it. But not everybody can do that. It's a great skill.
Yeah, and it changes from actor to actor as well. I feel like one of the things I've learned to develop as part of my job is how to really, really quickly understand how the actor in front of me today, or the actors, if I'm in a volume with a scene, but the actor that I'm talking to right now, how did they communicate best? How is it going to land? What do I need to say to land with them? Some actors really respond to emotional cues, emotional prompts. Some actors really, really, even in voice booths, really respond to physical stuff. Like they physically want to know what they're doing, and they will then act it out, and that embodying it really helps for them. And some actors really like, particularly with voice, very technical stuff, like go down at the end of this line. I want you to land on, make this the point of the sentence, that kind of thing. Every actor responds differently, and sometimes you'll get a point where an actor is just something, clearly what you're saying is not landing, and they're not getting it. And to me, that's me going, right, how can I do better? Like, I need to fix what I'm saying. So how can I work on that? And sometimes you go, you know what? That is how that line's going to land today. And I have to trust them because they've been cast as the character. This is how this character is doing this line today. And at the end of the day, we're not saving lives with video games yet. So does it matter if this line doesn't land exactly the way I think it should be?
Is there a difference in how you approach actors that might have, say, a slightly higher profile, that you're getting a lot of like A-list actors coming into gaming now, Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk, etc. Like they might have come from outside the world of gaming and might have a different idea about how it's done, but be very confident, if mistaken, on how it's done. Do you have any different ways of talking to them and acting and working with them?
Like I always say, this is a very, very sweeping generalization. But I tend to say once you get to a certain profile of acting, I have found that people are either still very, they want to do the best they can for their craft. They're very craft-based. And in that way, if you have someone, it doesn't matter how high profile they are, if they're craft-based, then you can always find a way to work with that, A lot of celebrities don't, because video games is a whole new thing to them, then I think as long as they're kind of open to trying things and working in maybe a slightly different way, then that's fine. But sometimes you get people who are booked for the profile who are not really that interested in the job, if that makes sense. Yeah. And that can be quite tricky because they want the job just to be done, to be over. And that's got to be something that you just work with. There have definitely been times when I've worked with actors who, of like any level, to be perfectly honest, who just don't really want to be there, They want it to be as less fuss as possible. They want to do it their way. They want to leave. They just want to get it done and they leave. And that's tricky.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I am just this tiny, tiny little cog in these projects. These games are not my baby. It's not like film directing or theatre directing, stage directing, where the director has all this control, it's a vision of theirs. I'm a performance director. I'm just this tiny little bit in a much bigger production. Not doing my job down, but it's not my creative vision. So my job is to get the material, to get the performances that are going to work for the game. A lot of it is putting my own ego aside. But if that means for this particular game, if somebody wants a particular actor to do a role and they don't really care how it happens, but the work needs to be done, then you just do whatever you need to do to get the work done. And sometimes that is just shutting up and getting the performance out of them that they're willing to give.
You can only control what you can control, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So sometimes there's a lot of, I don't have any nightmare celebrity stories. Yeah, sorry.
I know.
Yeah, sorry. No goss. But I really don't, because I've been lucky enough to work with, and I've auditioned, I've auditioned very well-known actors, who have been very happy to audition, and have been great. So I don't have any nightmares. I have sessions where things are not as smooth as you'd like them to be, but I've never had anybody storm off. I've never had anybody. I have, but not celebrities for different reasons. But I've never had any kind of diva-like behaviour from celebrities. Yeah.
I wanted to pick up on something you said about like your job is to, to help deliver the game vision. With that in mind then, have you ever completely disagreed with how like a game director wants a performance to be done? And what do you do in that situation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like definitely. Yeah, there's definitely times when I'm just like, I think this is the wrong path. Not loads, to be fair, but I think definitely where I'm like, I just don't think this is a good idea. I've disagreed on casting decisions as well.
Okay.
Like when people are really keen to have someone, I'm like, I just don't think this is the best fit for the role. But at the end of the day, I don't have the big picture.
Yeah.
Like I don't have like the creative director of any game, whether that's, micro indie or whether that's an enormous AAA plus game. They know something about all the departments. They know how animation and designing work together and how the programming works, how level design works. And, they've got how the audio is going to fit in. They know all of that. They've got an idea of that. I don't have that picture. I don't know. I don't even know a lot of the time what the game's going to look like, aside from any art I get. It would be incredibly egotistical of me to kind of go, actually, I think that this should be. Or my own personal kind of a discomfort comes where I feel that like an actor might not be right for a role based on my understanding of it, or I just feel that the performance is being taken in a way that isn't very real or grounded, that's not serving the story and the character as I know it. And occasionally, the way I deal with that is that if I really feel, I have a word with myself first and go, is this really your place to say anything? And it really depends on your relationship with the client, with the developers.
I was going to say, because I guess that's partly why they've got you, hopefully, because your opinion on that is knowledgeable, and they'll be like, well, to offer your opinion occasionally, if it's right.
But you'll know how this is as an actor. Like some people you feel like you can have that conversation with, and sometimes you're like, what, it doesn't matter what I think. It's not my place to say anything.
Do the job.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly the same thing. Like some people I can say, hey, look, these are my thoughts on this. And I always phrase it like, not like I'm definitely right, justify yourself, but more like, can I understand where you're coming from on this? Can I understand why you're asking for this kind of decision? Because for me, it reads like X, Y, and Z. But I obviously don't have the full picture. So can I understand where you're coming from? Why is this? And sometimes they say, it's because of this. And I had no idea. Oh, if I'd known that made a lot more sense. But yeah, that's all part of it. And sometimes they're like, it's just because I really like this. And I'm like, I don't know whether that's serving the game the best. But yeah.
So when you're casting then, what's your process? Do you start with talking to the studio and getting briefed by them? Or do you read the script, or they give you a profile of the character? Or all of the above?
Dream scenario.
Dream scenario. It really depends on the size of the game and at which point in the process they decide to add actors. With really big games, with kind of AAAs or AA's, often it's quite an early conversation. So I haven't seen scripts or anything. They're only partway through writing. So we will talk about the overall style of the game, what we're after, for what kind of the characters that they want, concept art. Often I see early scenarios. I often see like tests, demos, vertical slices. That can be really, really useful. So generally that starts off with me going, me and the developer having a conversation. What is this? What is this game? What do you want for performance? What are you looking for? And sometimes they've made no decisions, and sometimes they've made a number of decisions. And sometimes they've already done some initial casting themselves. They've tried it for like vertical slices or whatever, and they want to bring in an expert to kind of handle it. Sometimes they've done that because it's all gone wrong. And they want that. But equally, on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes I get brought in really late because they've made a decision they want things fully voiced. That generally won't happen with mocap, because that's a much longer process. But sometimes, a lot with indie games, will get brought in relatively late in the process, and they're like, "We're going to cast voices for all of this." Yeah.
Right. Oh gosh.
And by that point, characters are often really locked. Script is often, really nearly ready. So I'm retrofitting things in. Yeah.
That's going to be one of my questions actually, because sometimes the games, like you say, have been going, let's say 5 years, maybe longer sometimes, maybe shorter. Has that ever happened where you've come that far and then maybe more characters are coming in and being cast whilst you...
Yeah. I always think about games as nothing's ever locked until it's locked, I saw a really great talk at Game SoundCon by Insomniac talking about the latest Spider-Man game and how they had this whole solution because they had a load of NPCs that were added and they were quite late in the process, but the writers were too busy. So they had to solve the problem of giving all these NPCs dialogue. And they did it all with improv. They got actors that they trusted, cast actors that they trusted, and they recorded a bunch of improv for it. That's really simplifying the process. There's but they had a whole talk on it. It's really good. But I thought that was, so it even happens. I love that. I was like, oh, so that happens in big studios as well. Yeah. So that can happen right up until the end. Right up until really late in the process. People can go, we've added this character. Yeah. Wow.
And then you just deal with it. I love that. So for fun, has there been within the casting process then any do's and don'ts maybe that you've come across?
I would say do come in with choices. Hopefully if you are doing something, because as you know, these days, if you are coming into audition in person, there's a really good chance you've done at least some kind of self-tape or something beforehand, or at least you will have had the materials. Yeah. So read your stuff. If it's a mocap audition, you'll need to be off book, or PCAP audition, learn your lines, know that. But make choices about the character. It's not very helpful for me as a casting director if people come in and go, so what do you want me to do? I'm really flexible and I can do anything. And I'm like, well, that's not really helpful because I've got 15 minutes with you or 20 minutes with you.
Right.
I need you to start with something and don't be afraid of redirects. Like you might start with something and it might not be at all what we're going for, but it gives me something to go on. Don't feel bad because you haven't nailed exactly what's in my head. How can you do that? That's not possible. I would say come in with choices and be really prepared to change them. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So be flexible, but also, come in with some ideas yourself.
Come in with some ideas. I love that. Actors come in and go, so we might do like a couple of takes and then they might go, oh, I wondered if I could try it this way. Sure, great. If we've got time and I don't, great. I'd love to see what else you can bring to it. I don't know. This is part of me getting to know you. Show me what you have.
Yeah, and you can't really go wrong, can you, if you think about it? Because in games, you can be absolutely anything or make that character absolutely...
Yeah, absolutely anything. And I would say just be aware as well with games, because there are a lot of characters in games. Not all games, obviously. Some games are like, very one character going all the way through. But with games, you are a lot of characters. And just remember, if you're not right for this, you could easily be right for something else. Yeah. You're especially for like PCAP or mocap, you might not physically be quite right for this particular role because I'm specifically looking for someone to fit something specific. But you could be great for, some NPCs we've got. Or physically this might not work, but your voice is really good and your acting's really good. So I've got some voice stuff that I need, some ADR or voice stuff or just generals. I've just got a load of voice-only roles. Or not this game, but the next game. Also, I would say if you've never done a video game before, one of the things, it's not like, I'm sure other directors might be a little bit different about this, but I really don't like actors coming and going, I don't really know anything about video games. Like, I don't really play video games. I don't need you to play video games as an actor, but I do need you to respect the art form,
Yes.
So being really dismissive about video games is not going to, help your cause.
Do you think that's changed, though, like, when you started in video games and where we are now, where, I've said to you before that I think, you look at the Video Game Awards last year and they were almost as big, if not bigger than the Oscars, or they felt more watched or more current. Maybe that's just because I'm in the space. But do you feel like that respect level amongst actors has definitely gone up, and everyone, I suppose?
Yeah. I think the profile of video games is much greater now. I don't have conversations with agents as much as I used to, which is having to convince them to have their actors audition.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
There's still agencies that don't want to audition that I approach, that don't want to audition, don't want to put their actors up for things.
Oh, well, what if the actors knew?
I know. And I have had sometimes, I have had actors come up to me just in, socially or after we've worked together on something going, oh, I just wondered what happened, that game that you did, I would have really liked to have done that. I'd love to more. And I'm like, well, this is awkward because I did approach your agent. Your agent said you weren't interested. And it's not that the actors weren't, the agents weren't. This is, I don't want to get regionalist about this, but it is a bit more of a UK thing. The US is in that kind of a way. It's just I find the UK, like, quite old school theatrical agents can be still a little bit like, what are these video games? But I think the profile's going up. Things like Baldur's Gate 3, where it was so, it was so present. It was such a kind of phenomenon that's really changed things for people. I think that kind of idea of, oh God, they're doing, what did somebody say to me really recently? I was at a dinner party and they heard I worked in video games, and they were like, oh, my son plays video games. Did something about fantasy, something D&D? And I'm like, was it Baldur's Gate 3? And they're like, I think so. And I'm like,
it's seeping through.
It's seeping through. And they were like, yes, I was watching they were playing. It's really real, isn't it? I mean, they were being very truthful, very real. It's real acting, they called it. Real acting. And I'm like, yes, it is. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. It's not in their world, so I can't but I just thought that was really interesting, the fact that they were like, oh, it's real acting. I was like, it is real acting. Yes. So I think the perception is changing. And I think having things like, the BAFTAs makes a difference.
Yeah.
I know the BAFTAs have been around for ages now, and we've actually had performance categories in there since, I want to say, 2011.
You were a breakthrough.
I was a breakthrough.
I was. Brilliant. What an achievement.
Thank you.
What was that like? Was that the process with that, and where did that take you? Was that quite a stepping stone?
It was weird because I was the second COVID year. So,
was it?
So
okay.
Yeah. So it was 20. I became a BAFTA Breakthrough in 2021. I was the first kind of a performance or voice director to be a breakthrough. And when I applied, I was like, it wasn't on a whim. I really wanted to do it, but I was like, I have no idea, because I looked up all the past breakthroughs, and they're all like game designers and game directors and artists and, animators. And I'm like, okay, I don't know whether they've got any chance of this. I did a video application, which was terrifying. I hate being filmed, but I was like, look, if I'm putting myself out there, I'm going to do it. So it was great. It was really, like, I'm very, very grateful to BAFTA for that support. And what's even better is that I can see in the years I've been able to support people who have become BAFTA breakthroughs, and see people from Baldur's Gate 3. Samantha Bayard, and was the year before last, Jennifer English was this year. See other directors, performance directors. So that's been a real boost in that kind of a way to, like, be part of that.
How brilliant to be the first director to be there, and now seeing how the games are evolving and being recognised. Yeah. Great part of history.
I just didn't even know whether that was going to be, it was even going to be a recognised thing. So it felt really good. And to have people go, oh, that's a job. That's a job for games. I still have people. People go, do you do that full time? And I'm like, I do it full time.
You could just mess them and say, no, I do it on the weekends.
Just dabble.
Casually collecting awards.
Yeah. My parents, actually, we were watching The Last of Us.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't realise that started its life as a video game. Like these incredible narratives, and that's another way it's kind of going into the world, isn't it? People understanding. Yeah. And did you think that COVID? I definitely experienced a lot of my actor friends suddenly going, obviously, because it continued, quite rightly, trying to get into voice acting and realising, God, these scripts are brilliant. As they have over the years, they've got really great, haven't they?
Oh, and at all levels of games as well. I mean, I've been working on the casting for a really lovely indie game, and it's very funny. Like, it's really, the scripts are really, really good, really good. And we're doing the casting has been brilliant, because we've got such brilliant auditions back from the actors who've clearly really enjoyed doing it. And it's really funny. Like, we've got some really good stuff, and it is an indie game being made by 2 developers in Australia.
Wow.
And they're doing it, and it's great. It's proper writing. I think if you're not involved in games, you have this whole perception of it that it's just like early Diablo, where it's like, I'm out of guns, kind of thing, and that sort of, just a little bar. And fair enough. Or like Call of Duty. No shade on Call of Duty. I've worked in Call of Duty.
I was. I think I've probably aged out of it now. Like,
aged out.
But it's just basically the same games, and it's like no shade on COD, but it's the same game, which is slightly different skins and textures every year.
Okay.
I like the actual, like, narrative missions they do are really cool, and I suppose that's where most of the performance stuff comes in.
I think there's still a lot of skill in, because I've done a lot of. I did for Modern Warfare 2. I directed a lot of the UK based operators, which are the basically the player characters, but the ones that it's all barks, so it's all just short projected lines. On your six.
Yeah.
Grenade. Classic. And there's a real skill in doing that, because you don't really realize it, but if you are a hardcore COD player, those, a lot of that is military simulation, and it has to sound really realistic, because everything is, the gun's realistic. They try and keep it very, very real. So as an actor, you have to sound like a real soldier, like this is your life, this is what you do every day. So I think there's a real skill, and to keep that consistently, doing hours of barks is not doesn't sound like the most stimulating creative thing in the world, but there's still a lot of skill in it. And and it took a lot to cast people who could do that, because I was looking for them, we were looking for them to fit a really small parameter of being very believable as a soldier, being able to keep that up over having stamina to do it over a certain amount of time. You had to have the right tone. We had native languages that we had to look for. There's a lot of different stuff. And it's not The Last of Us. It's not a beautiful emotive scenes, but there's still a lot of skill in it. And I think that still occupies like an important place within acting in games.
I was going to ask, have you ever said no to a project? Again, you don't have to name names unless you want to.
Have I said no to a project? Yes, I have, because I wasn't the right choice of director for it. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's very humble.
There is somebody, well, I guess so, but it was more like, okay. Sometimes it's not my story to tell. I feel like somebody is a better fit for this. So I had a project where they were looking for, I'm trying to think about how I can phrase this. Okay. The project was very much about the identity of a particular character. They were going to use an actor who wasn't super experienced because of the identity of that particular character. And it meant that they wanted someone who's a little bit raw, a little bit newer, without going into too many details. And they came to me, studio came to me, and I'd been recommended, as it wasn't that long ago, and they said, they explained the project. And I'm like, and it's a lead character. There was NPCs, but it was, there's one lead character kind of telling the story. And I just got the details and I looked at it and I thought, you don't want me. You want someone who can identify with this, It's not that I felt I would be unsafe, but I think the actor will feel more emotionally safe if they have someone who identifies with this experience better.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I just don't think I'm the right person for this. Or I can do it, it's definitely something I can do, but I can already name a couple of other people who'd be a better fit.
So you recommended?
So I recommended people.
Yeah, great. That's the lovely thing about the creative industry sometimes, isn't it?
I was like, I just don't feel, so I have said no to something when it's just like, I don't feel I'm the best person to guide this. I think there's somebody else here who could do a better job. And I have asked to be taken off projects before as well. Yeah.
During them?
And only a couple of times, but yes.
Well, to completely flip the script, what's a moment where you've been incredible? Where you've been really proud of not just your work, but the team's work, something like a really positive experience?
Well, there's lots of positive experiences. Every time you have a moment where something really clicks for an actor and they become the character, that's an incredibly positive experience. There were lots of moments of that in Baldur's Gate 3 where you just go, oh, that's really worked. That's beautiful. That's really lovely. There's a game I'm working on at the moment, an indie game, micro indie studio called The Quiet Things, which has got some very, very heavy themes about it in it, including domestic abuse, depression, mental health, grooming, and a lot of other very heavy themes. It's a real story. It's about a real experience. I'm really, really proud of the work we've done on that, because we needed our actors to give 100%, not that you wouldn't anyway, but we really needed them to be very emotionally vulnerable. It's all voice acted, there's no mocap in it, and it's not animated. But there are some very, very difficult scenes we take it up to kind of the moment. So with abuse scenes, we take it up to the moment of it happening. We don't get them to enact out the abusive moment, but there is a lot of like moments that come kind of before and after. It's based on diaries that was written by the creative director of the studio between the ages of 8 to about 17, 18. Yeah, and so it's her story. I'm really, really proud of what we've done because it was such a sensitive project to cast and direct. And I learned a lot about directing, a lot about acting, a lot about how to make people feel safe.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose that's another great thing about games and it being an immersive medium to be able to do real projects like that is a whole other level of experiencing it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it is something. But yeah, being able to bring personal stories, real stories like that to games is, I think games is a really perfect medium for that kind of thing.
Me too. On that same vein then, as this is a game you're working on at the moment, have you got anything else you can talk about that's coming out, or where can we find you?
Where, as in
right now? No.
Right now.
On your socials.
Come find me. Socials, I am Sounds Wild.
Sounds Wild.
SOUNDSWILDE on the socials. Blue Sky, Insta's probably the first to, the ones to probably find me on. Have I got anything? I mean, yeah, I'd probably
NDAs is tricky, but
yeah, no, I can't. Like The Quiet Things is the only reason I can talk about that is because they've got an open development process. Okay. So they're quite happy for me to kind of talk about it.
Well, let's rave about that one because I am keen to play and see that. It's still in production. I'm not sure I think they hope to release it maybe sometime this year, but it's an indie project from a micro indie studio. So I'm thrilled at the acting. We've had a fabulous cast. They've people like that I've worked with before, like Dave Jones, who plays Halson in Baldur's Gate 3, actors who I work with in Metaphor Refantasio, but also actors that are completely new to games as well. A lot of actors and very experienced actors who've never done a game before. It's very hardcore, just word of warning. It's got quite a lot of trigger content warnings across it. When I gave several talks about it last year, and I had to put content warnings in the talks because of the content matter. So just be aware. But there's you can find out on Steam, The Quiet Things from Silver Script Games. So you can have a look and. I should say wish list. There we go. Wish list.
Wish list on Steam.
Okay. Thank you.
There we are.
Well, you're such a busy lady. I know there's lots of it you can't talk about. So we're very thankful that you were able to come along today. And that was so educational and entertaining. And I feel like I've learned a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you both of you. It's been really great.
This has been the ReadyAimFire podcast. Thanks for watching.